Now, before I started making this list, there was one movie in particular I wanted to see. And it's the most recent film I've seen that is on this list, and it's made the list. Number 10 is Alice in Wonderland. I never saw this movie growing up. I don't know why. When I saw the animated film, it did not open up at all like how I thought it was going to open. It opened up just with the mother reading books and Alice just listening, and I was just like, oh, yes. I was so happy it opened up like that. So, because I love it. I always forget like how good Disney and how good animated films can go with like setting up the initial world where somebody lives, and it's not so oppressive. It's just you gotta learn your studies. It's like, but I don't want to. I'm a little girl and I don't want to learn. It's great. That's what kids do. It's like, oh, I don't want to learn. I want to. She says, I want to live in a world of nonsense. My world would be all nonsense if it could be. And what happens immediately? A rabbit with a watch just pops out of nowhere. I love when movies do that. They don't mess around. They just jump right into it. It's like, okay, you want to live in a world of nonsense? Here you go. Follow this rabbit down the hole. I love when movies can do that. The only problem I had with this film, very quickly, is I didn't love all the musical numbers. I was a little surprised that this was a musical. It was only an hour and 15 minutes, and then I was like, oh, well, much of this is musical? I could have done without that, but regardless, here's why it's on this list. The zaniness, the energy of this film, the colors, the ideas being thrown in, wow, it was nonstop. I didn't feel exhausted at all watching this movie. When she's following the rabbit, like that's the one constant. She's constantly trying to find this rabbit, and even though like there's no purpose, she just wants to probably ask him, "What are you?" And the rabbit just be like, "I'm late, I'm late, I'm late, I'm late, I'm late," and they run off. And she gets in, and the first thing she's falling. Then everything's like floating around her, and then she falls upside down in an upside down world. She runs in and she sees a doorknob that can talk, and then she has to drink this vial, which allows her to shrink. But then when she shrinks, she can't get the key that just appears. It's like, oh, well, open this box. The box just appears. This is a world where things just appear out of nowhere when you want them, and that's what I love. I love how this movie isn't like, oh, well, there was something back there that she could have used there. It's like, no, what is being shown is being shown for a reason, and it just appears out of nowhere. Things just happen in this movie. Like, she doesn't even unlock the door. She goes out of it while she's with her tears, and then her tears turn into an ocean, and there's birds in the ocean, and they're trying to get dry by running in a circle, but the ocean keeps washing on top of them. I can't make sense of that. It's like, that makes no sense. Why? You can't get dry. And she says, you can't get dry this way. It's like, but, oh, no, they can. They're running around. They don't care. They seem like they're having the most fun in that circle. And then she meets Tweedledee and Tweedledum. And they're just musical, they're like the actor friends that you have who are like, hey, I have this idea. I have this story I want to tell. And it's like, the story is interesting. It's like, okay, but I have to go. No, we got another one for you. Just sit right down. And it's like, of course they would do that. There's just so much in this film, and my favorite moments, the ones where I just went, my jaw dropped, and I smiled and I chuckled, were the caterpillar. I don't know what it exactly means, but I wish I could just analyze the heck out of that and just be like, ooh, that means this and that means this, but at the same time, I know it's meaningless, but it has all the meaning in the world. It's just so funny. When he turns into a butterfly and he yells at her, it's just, that's so funny. I love when they're gonna burn Alice out of the house. I love, my favorite part, in this film was like the Mad Hatter scene. That's probably as close to just anything of resembling any sense, but it's all nonsense. At the same time, it's the only thing that is a must. That's the thing. This movie has characters who have a must situation. Like the rabbit must get there on time. The bird must be in charge. The doorknob must be closed. The Hatter must be mad. And he must drink tea. That's all you need. They have to be drinking tea. Anything else is fair game. And there's so much richness in that scene. I can't even unpack it. It's just so great. And I love how fast this movie ends, too. It just ends... And I'm not upset that it ends in a dream, because of course. Of course it's a dream. And I love, too, how, like, Alice says she wants to live in a world of nonsense, but there's that moment where she's sad and she's crying because, like, she doesn't... You know, I give myself sense, but I don't listen to it. And I love that because it's like, we all want to live in a world that makes no sense, but we are not designed for that. We are not meant to live in a world of nonsense because we'd go crazy. We are meant to live in a world where we understand the rules. We don't understand the rules of Wonderland, except for the people in Wonderland. They don't understand our rules. They'd probably be annexed, put into an insane asylum or something. But yeah, it's just a perfect flowing movie. It has no end to it. I never feel down when I'm watching this film. If I was ever having a creative mind bump, I didn't know what to do, I would put on Alice in Wonderland for an hour and 15 minutes and be like, I feel great. And that's why it's on the list. Number 9 is Fantastic Mr. Fox. This is a movie that, oh man, this is my favorite Wes Anderson film, by far. Don't get me wrong, I love Royal Tenenbaums. I love The Grand Budapest Hotel. That was the first one I saw of his, and oh man, that's a great film. But Fantastic Mr. Fox is just something I always want to see. I love the color palette of this movie. I love the stop motion. It's just the little details, the little moving of the furs of the fox, and I love Bogus Bunsen being their introduction. Bill Murray's narration of their lives is great. I love the images that are shown. I love the planning with the Beagles heist. Kylie with his eyes and just, apple juice, and goes off. That's just one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Petey's song. My brother and I quote that all the time. As I'm singing dippity-doppity-doppity, zippy-zee, zoppy-zai-oppy. What are you singing, Petey? Just thought I'd make it up as I went along, really. Well, that's just weak songwriting. You wrote a bad song, Petey. And he just throws a cigarette at him and walks away. And Petey's just... It's perfect. It's a hilarious moment. Yeah, I love the Whack Bat introduction. It's like, again, I have no idea what that game means, but they understand all of it. When Christopherson dives in the water after Ash goes, "Watch this, Dad!" This is just a fun movie, and there's so much... I'm just going to say, if you can't make an animated film energized like this and so much fun, you're not doing it right. If you can't have somebody just smiling on their face while they talk about their favorite animated movies, you're not doing it right. Because it needs to be energized, it needs to be interesting, and this movie's so great. The one thing I never really get, and again, I gotta get into this, is just the wolf moment. You can see he has a phobia of wolves, and he has a look at it, and while I like that little moment where he's just like, put his hand up, I don't think it feels as big as I think it is, because he was never faced against wolves or anything like that. But, you know, it's neither here nor there. And I love, like, we read the book, the short story, with this movie, and I love how they chose to go that extra level. They could have just ended it with them stealing, but they said, you know what? There's an opportunity here. We're gonna flood them with apple cider and just try to drown them out. And the movie just escalates to a hilarious end. It's like, Dad's on fire! Like, again, I love the British humor from the British characters, and I love the voice acting in this movie. It's such a funny film, and it's sophisticated too. This is one of those movies where it's like kids can enjoy it, but adults can really get it too. And I love it's like, what the cuss? Like, from now on, I think I want to say that just because I get in trouble when I swear. It's like, what the cuss? Where'd the giant fence come from? We had a master plan. It says lightning bolt. Man, I'm just thinking about this, and again, it's a quotable movie. I love this movie so much. Number 8 is Pinocchio. This was a movie I watched a lot when I was a kid, and I was away from it for a few years. I didn't think I ever watched it when I was in junior high and high school, so it was like for like 6 years I didn't watch it. And then I was deciding, you know what, I'm going to watch Disney's films from the beginning to the end. Didn't do that, so there's a few Disney films I haven't seen. But, boy, oh boy, I was surprised with this movie. What can I start with? I think there were 2 big things with this movie that got me. I love the idea of this wooden boy going through the stages of trying to become a human, what it means to be human. I love that theme, and seeing these little experiences we're experiencing with Pinocchio. And even though we can say, oh, you idiot, it's like, he doesn't know any better. I love the music of this. My mom got me the soundtrack of this film, and When You Wish Upon a Star is one of my favorite songs ever. It's just, there's something, when you're watching the movie, and when you see the image, it's just a song of hope. It's just, it's a beautiful moment. And I love the moment when you see the clocks, all the woodwork and all the clocks making music together. Jiminy Cricket is a great character. I love the Blue Fairy. My favorite thing though in this movie isn't really nothing to do with those. I love how nothing with the bad characters is resolved. I love how the puppeteer is still greedy and still has a lot of money, and he doesn't get arrested. I love how the only thing he loses is Pinocchio. He doesn't lose. Pleasure Island. The boys do not turn back into humans. Nowadays, you would have to save the boys, and you'd have to make them turn from donkeys into humans. And I think we're slowly getting away from that need in animated films, but you would need that. And it's like, nope, we're not going to do it. We're not going to get you off that easy. You have to realize that this is a part of life. You don't get a simple, easy out. Sure, this other boy did great in his adventure, and he got out, and he's fine. He got out. Now it's your turn. You have to change. You have to get out, and you have to make that choice. And it's like, oh, but they're donkeys, and they're screaming, "Mama, Mama!" It's a horrifying scene. Oh man, that's a chilling scene. But it's like, yeah, it's a horrible situation. But sometimes nobody else is going to help you. You got to get out of that yourself. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. That's a hard choice to make, but it is an honest choice for Disney to do that. Yeah, it's just... And I love Honest John. Honest John is one of my favorite Disney kind of villains. He's not huge, but he's just charismatic as heck, and I love him. He's charismatic as cuss. It's great. Yeah, Pinocchio is a movie that I think, when I think of classic Disney, this is one that impresses me a lot. So I just decided to make a little switch. I know, again, not a permanent list. I decided to switch number 7 and 6. Number 7 is My Neighbor Totoro. This was the first ever Studio Ghibli film I saw, and I loved it. Everything I do, whenever I watch a foreign language movie, like an animated film that has the option of English subtitles, or no, English dubbing, I will watch that version first, because I want to take in the images and I want to take in the world that the animators created. But I prefer to watch it with the Japanese voices and then the English subtitles, or whenever it comes to any movie with subtitles nowadays. Just because I feel like there's something a little bit lost, in particular with like child actors. I find that the child actors in this version of My Neighbor Totoro don't get it as much. Like, they kind of get it, but not as much. With the Japanese kids, I can get it. Like, I'm just like, oh man, these kids feel real, and they don't feel distant at all with with how they're saying what they're saying. The English kids, I feel, they don't get that as much. But this is a beautiful movie. I was shocked to find out it was made in the 80s. I was like, really? The 80s? Because this looks great. And goodness gracious. And after this movie, I was like, what's a Totoro? I searched up on the internet. What's a Totoro? It's a creation by Hayao Miyazaki. He created that thing. It's like inspired by a troll, but he made it. And I'm like, good for you, man, because that's a good character. This movie has the definition of adorable scenes, what adorable means, is when Totoro meets May for the first time, when she just lands on his belly. Oh, it's such a cute moment. It's so adorable. Oh, warms my heart. Everything with Totoro is just a cute creature, and May is just an adorable child. I think May is my favorite part of this movie. She is a kid. She's a 4-year-old kid, and I can believe it. She's just got that big grin, like it goes all the way to her face. And then when she's sad, she's really sad. The biggest moment for me is when they find out that their mother is not going to be back because she's sick. And that's the thing with this movie. There's not really much of a plot or a story. Not even events. This is an experience. You're experiencing kids. Like, just experiencing childhood. And, when they get their new house, and when they're moving to their new house, and they're excited, and then it gets a little bit of a story once their mom is sick. But I think that's a little bit like life. It's not necessarily, you can have a lot of experience, and you can have a lot of things, and they're just kind of seem random, but then there's always one moment in your life where everything just feels like it's a narrative story. It's like at the hospital, it's like hearing the news, that's the inciting incident, and then you get there, but then there's traffic, and then you find a side road or something. But with this, it's like May runs off, and they look for May, and then they're worried that May is drowned. And then they find her. It's, oh man, this is such a rich family film. A family film. Oh, I adore this movie. It's so much fun to watch. I would say if you haven't seen a Studio Ghibli movie, start with this one. This is the animated film I wish I started with when it comes to Japanese animation. And number 6 is The Incredibles. The reason I went with this, then this is a little bit on like Shrek 2 kind of level, where it's like I laugh a lot more with it, and it's an effortlessly quotable movie. This is one I grew up with, and the quotable lines, of course. The scene with Dash and his teacher. It's like there was I don't know how he does it, but he did. There was an attack when he moved, and then after he moves, there's attack. Coincidence? I think not. Great scene. I love Frozone's super suit. That's the greatest scene I've ever seen in an animated film. Man alive, that is so funny, and that's one that's quoted by my family all the time. We laugh at it, we quote it, and it's not just that it's funny. It actually shows a side of Frozone that we need to understand. It's like he is bound by his family. What this movie has over Shrek 2 that makes it so much higher. While Shrek 2 is such a funny movie, the depth of it is basically just surface level depth. There's a few little other moments into it. But with The Incredibles, there's so much with these people, and their choices are based on their families, and they're going through a lot of things. Dash is dealing with the young kid. He's very talented, but he's got to understand you can't just flaunt your talent. And Violet is trying to break out of her shyness, and she's attracted to somebody, but she can't say it. And Mrs. Incredible is trying to deal with, she was the big feminist or woman power icon of the superhero age, and now she's a mother, but she's still strong, and that's the thing. She's like, my husband is trying to go back on his superheroics, and it's like, you know what? I'm gonna do the same thing, but it's for my family, and she's there and she's supporting him. Oh man, this is such a great movie. Holly Hunter is awesome with her voice acting in this. Yeah, and they feel like real people. They don't just the little human moments where like she looks at herself in the mirror and she's like, oh, I'm getting fat, and like Mr. Incredible's whole transformation. He's had to let himself go, and he's in an office room, and he's struggling with what it is to be a hero, and it's, or can he be a hero? He doesn't like the job, but if he goes back to hero, like he puts his family at risk and in danger. It's like that's a huge thing, and he's running. He loses weight and he looks great, but at the same time, when he's in better shape, he's not necessarily a better man, and that's a huge thing. It's like just because you've bettered yourself doesn't mean you've bettered your family situation. But the biggest thing for me, and the reason I think that this comes on here is Syndrome. He's I think he's a great character as a staple of like, this is what happens when you let obsession get the better of you. When your identity is so shaped around one individual, you lose sight of who you really are. And unfortunately, it gets to the worst case in him. It's a point where because he committed so much of his life to Mr. Incredible. He was such a fan of Mr. Incredibles. But he said his fanship was not necessarily appreciated. It wasn't rewarded, and he felt like he needed to be rewarded in some way to have a purpose. And he said, well, if you're going to deny me what I feel is my purpose, then I'm going to take away your life. I'm going to become stronger than you ever were. And that's the wrong way to go about that. But it's so understandable. Like, he's such a tragic figure, and the way he dies too. It's funny because we had the whole thing with Yzma, who's a great character too, with the whole capes thing. We laughed at that, but now it's sad because it's like, well, he's gone because of he allowed himself to. He went too far. He went way too far. His death is actually something that needed to happen. You wish that it could have turned out better. But you know that he was just going too far, too fast. And I think a lot of people do that nowadays. But that's one thing that I love about this movie. There's a lot to be said about our own fanships and what we believe is important. It's not necessarily being all powerful and being a superhero, being a sidekick. It's your family. Your family is what you should worry about, and you're concerned about that. And I believe that. I believe that your family is what you should strive to better when you better yourself. The reason I switched it was because I thought about that. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, there's a lot to this film, and I loved it. Number 5 is yet again a very recent film I watched. I only watched it, I think, a few days ago, not even a week. Coco. This was just a great film. I love, for me personally, I love when any movie will make an effort to show off or try to represent a culture. Not necessarily, again, accurate representation, but the idea of the richness of this this film with the animation and how much they care about the idea of what Dia de los Muertos is about. Because I know what it is. I took high school Spanish, and I learned about what Dia de los Muertos was about, and its significance to Spanish culture, to Mexican culture. And then I was like, so I knew going in what how important it was, but then I was blown away by the animation of this movie. Like, wow. When I first saw the Undead City, I was just like, whew, you guys worked hard on that. This is a movie where very quickly I'm a huge trying to understand about writing a lot of the time and the significance of titles with movies. That's something for a big video to talk about for another time, but titles have a significance. And I was wondering, what does Coco mean? And when I found out that Coco was relating back to I believe it's his abuelita, or his great grandmother, and her importance. Again, this importance of family. That to me, that is a huge theme that runs with me when it comes to animated movies. When family is on the line, it hits me because I think that that's an important fact of life. And I love how these people, like, you know, I love how it's like the stakes in this movie. It's like you are allowed to go back, like when he enters into the dead realm, he steals the guitar and he enters the dead realm, and then it's like you're allowed to go back, but you're not allowed to play music. And he's like, okay, I'll do it. And then Miguel is his name. And then another great child character in an animated film, and he grabs a guitar and then he sent right back. Like, that's what a kid wants. A kid, that's the thing. People feel like, oh, well, you know, you're not allowed this, and so you can't have it. It's like, well, no, that's not how it works. It's not, you don't get to just say you're not allowed this, but of course that's what he has to deal with. He's like, okay, well, I'm gonna go and find my other cooler relative. And I love the twist that it's not who you think it is. It is not the talented musician. Well, it is, but it's not him. It's not the big famous man who gets all the glory. It's the man who you didn't know from the beginning. You thought you thought that shambling skeleton was just going to be a punchline character, but he has so much significance. And I love that scene when they're just in the water pit together, and you realize what Remember Me really was meant for. Oh, it's just it's a song that it won the Oscar for Best Song, and at first I was like, really? But then I realized in the context of the movie, I'm like, of course it had to be that, because it's not a cheap give me an Oscar song. There's a significance to it for the story and for the ending, which was so great. There's so many things just coming to my brain I want to talk about. Abuelita's great grandmother's character artwork, animation is brilliant, and the song between the two of them is great. And the idea that you don't need a picture to remember somebody, you need something of substance to remember them by, which is more important, more impactful. The whole, again, the twist is great. It's the one time I haven't been tired of a Disney twist, because that's the thing, they like to do twists for villains, but this one made sense, and this one had significance. I love also the great grandmother and her when she sings. She loved music, but it was family that meant to her. She made shoes to support her family, and now this is another big thing, and then why I think I love Coco. The idea that the family belief of what music, like they've been told that music is bad. But because, Coco can't speak, she can't explain why or anything. It's like everybody says, oh, well, this is why music is bad, and music is outlawed forever because it had no good in our lives. There's nothing good, because of course the great-great-grandmother didn't talk about why music was bad. She just said music is bad, and it's like that got distorted as it went down the line. And I think that's the dangers of interpretation there, where when you say something is bad but you don't give exact reasons and a history and you don't understand the full context of it, it's like, of course that's going to warp people's minds, of course that's going to manipulate people, and it's going to cause a hostile environment. You can't just say something is bad and have no reason for it. You have to say, well, this is bad because of this, and this. And this is the reason for it in evidence and the context and what the significance of it was. You can't just say it's bad and then ban it. It's something that is so important to understand. And of course that causes Miguel to rebel. It's great. It's so rich, and I love it. The only thing I hate about this, and I mean hate about this movie, and I'll get into this with another film very shortly, why I hate this element? That stupid dog. I know a lot of people say, oh, but he's so cute. I'm like, no, he's not. And I hate how they say, oh, he has a purpose by being a spirit guide. Oh my, what's his name? It's Dante. Dante the dog. I hate this thing so much. When I thought it was gonna be like one of those. I thought it was gonna be like a hey moment. Who's even worse? But I thought it was gonna be like they're gonna prove their worth in one way, and that's it. That doesn't even come up for this stupid thing. It's just he almost saves Miguel, but he doesn't. And then Miguel is saved by a proper spirit guide. Like when I see that big tiger, like giant lion beast, I'm like, that's a spirit guide, not you, you stupid dog. And I love dogs, and I'll get into why I love dogs as side characters later. But man, no, I can't stand that character, because they even acknowledge like 3 times. It's like the dog has nothing to offer. He's just like, oh, is that a dog? It's like, yeah. Can we please get into focus of the main story? Yes, please. Thank you. I'd love that. That dog had no purpose. You could have shaved probably 5-6 minutes out of the runtime with that dog. Out of it. Yeah. And that's it. That's the only thing that holds this movie a little bit back for me. Other than that, it's rich, it's beautiful, and I love it. Number 4 is Inside Out. I was actually wondering, what do I love more, Inside Out or Coco? Inside Out is the reason I picked it was, again, there's a lot in this movie. Like seeing like the backgrounds are so detailed, and there's so much richness in the ideas of that are. This is a movie you could do analyze studies on. It's like, what does that mean? What's the significance of that? What's the significance of that? It's like a philosophical dream. It's so rich, and I love it. I won't get into that because I'll be here for hours. What I love so much about Inside Out, though, is the subtleties that are introduced to us in the beginning. Riley's emotions feel like only one person can control the panel. And then everyone else has to just watch and say, okay, you're in charge, you're in charge, you're in charge. But when you see the parents' head, one of my favorite scenes, the dinner scene, where they are talking, and the mom and the dad are have all of their emotions at big control panels. That's a great tool for foreshadowing for what will happen to Riley. And what happens to all of us when we grow up. All of our emotions are at that control panel. And they all control, and they all work together. And then the father, he's got the same thing, but the guys are distracted by the hockey game. And it calls back to male and female and tendencies of like what a husband is always doing and what a wife is always doing. Like the husband's always thinking. It does like stereotypes, but doesn't make them stereotypes. They are based on what people like actually enjoy with their emotions. Like the husband is thinking about the game, while the wife is thinking about that, Cuban or Caribbean guy. It's like, come fly with me. And I think I was a little concerned about is, like, I was having the question is, like, isn't Riley kind of flat in this movie? Isn't she just a flat character? And granted, she's not my favorite in terms of when she speaks. But I think that's because, and I thought about this, I think it's because the emotions never give her own real dialogue. They control how she speaks. They're like, oh, Riley, be happy here. Oh, Riley, be disgusted here. And that's how you're going to feel about this. And be angry and just, and that's why I feel like she's flat. They feel as if it's simple in saying, you are this, you are this, you are this. You're never more than one thing. And it's when sadness takes control, that she doesn't tell Riley to do anything. She just kind of touches the control and moves something, and then Riley speaks for herself. That moment is so touching, and again, I feel again I don't like using this word, but I feel like it's a truth of the writers, and it's a truth of Riley, that she has not been given the time to speak, and she's like, I know that you want me to be happy, but I miss home, I miss Minnesota, it's hard, and they're like, we miss it too, And again, even though, and I know that that scene's coming up in the movie, and I want it to happen. Even though it's a tough scene, it's something you want to see come through, and you want Riley to say it. And I think for me, the biggest thing with this movie is it's saying to you, there's times when you have to move on. You have to allow your inner child to sometimes grow up. You can't just say that everything is isolated. You can't just go to Goofball Island and go to the Family Island and Hockey Island. They're all one big island. They're one thing that makes that is your center. And of course, when Bing Bong died in this, it was a big hit to me. Remembering the imaginary friends I used to have, and it was like you forgot them, you brought them back for a little while, and you're like, you know what, this is dumb. you have to forget them. Yeah, I thought, and I love the humor in this movie too, like the triple link gum commercial thing. This is a movie that understands what it means to be a person, and they kind of flaunt it, but they don't necessarily say, look at this, we're being a person, and they allow for them to be organic moments. It's just a really, they got the best voice talent for this movie too. So, yeah, I love Inside Out, and I can't wait to see it grow.